Also told Trump that since the fines are clearly not working, he may next order him behind bars, saying, quote, "The last thing I want to consider is jail. You are the former president and possibly the next president. The magnitude of that decision is not lost on me."
Fox's Eric Shawn in New York, where Columbia University-wide commencement ceremony is canceled now over safety concerns. There have been pro-Palestinian protests on campus since April 17th.
In an official announcement telling students that based on their feedback, they would be making the centerpiece of the commencement activities, the class day and school-level ceremonies where students are honored individually alongside their peers, rather than the university-wide ceremony that is scheduled for May 15th.
Fox's Madison Allworth at Columbia. America's listening to Fox News.
In the News Center, I'm Stephen Stone. So will Senator Tim Scott beat Donald Trump's pick for vice president?
Scott's back from visiting Trump Saturday at Mar-a-Lago, but tap dancing on his VP chances. Kristen Welker pressed the South Carolina Republican about it Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press, asking Scott if he's on the short list.
I certainly expect to have a decision from President Trump in the next 60 days or so, but he did not bring it up. I certainly didn't bring it up.
Trump's Saturday fundraiser attracted a number of potential running mates. Scott says he's just excited that a poor kid from South Carolina can become a U.S. Senator. I'm Charlie O'Brien.
Thank you, Charlie. University protests across the country putting President Biden's student loan forgiveness plans back into the spotlight. Speaking on Fox's Your World with Neil Cavuto, South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace said the federal government should not be bailing out students who engage in anti-Israel protests. In the News Center, I'm Stephen Stone.
WRHI Rock Hill, W261CY.
Durable, and our installers are so talented, unlike some other companies.
Road. Straight Talk on WRHI FM 100.1 and CN2 is presented by Founders Federal Credit Union. Relax, you're with Founders. Now here's Manning Kimmel broadcasting live from Substation 2 on Cherry Road in Rock Hill with Straight Talk, selected by the South Carolina Broadcasters Association as the state's top public affairs program.
And a good afternoon. Welcome into Substation 2, Cherry Road across from Winthrop for another edition of our Straight Talk program, presented by Founders Federal Credit Union. Relax, you're with Founders. Our thanks to our co-sponsor today, Comporium, your friendly neighborhood tech giant. Piedmont Medical Center is with us today, a community built on care. You can find out more about them online at piedmontmedicalcenter.com. What a great way to start off the week with a very quiet, reserved, doesn't have a whole lot of personality now. His name is Mike Fanning. He's the state senator from District Number 17, a job you've had for how long now?
Almost 8 years.
8 years. All right. And you're up for re-election this year, are you
yes.
not? Okay, well, we'll talk about that a little later. So what's, I only have a half hour in the show, but it seems like every time we get together, we're talking about some kind of a fiscal dilemma at the state of South Carolina. Last year, it was the comptroller. We didn't know where the accounting error was for a couple of $1 billion.
Yes.
This year,
and if I can,
sure.
just to remind folks, it was $3 billion. The good news was it was not actual money. It was
right.
It was a falsifying of figures that we then asked him to resign. He wouldn't resign. We actually started an impeachment process, and the day before the impeachment trial happened, he resigned. The governor has replaced him with a holdover that will hold over till the next election, where we will then vote on whether we want to keep having the comptroller general elected or appointed by the governor. But we got through that crisis last year, and then in January of this year, the committee that I'm on in Senate Finance was doing our review of budgets for each agency. We do every single year. Every single year, the Attorney General will come and present the money that they spent the past year, how he spent the money, what additional money he needs for the coming year. He proposes his budget for the coming year, and we do that for every single agency. And this year, when the Treasurer's Office made their report, let's just say lightning struck.
Well, the lightning amounted to about $1.8 billion of money that, you have to correct me now, this has been spent, we don't know exactly.
This money has not been spent.
Right. It's sitting in an account. That's correct.
It is sitting in an account.
But we don't know where the money came from.
Correct.
And therein lies the question.
And the treasurer only has one job, and that's to take the money, know where it came from, invest it, and then get it back to where it came from. And
So
he can't tell us where it came from, and he withheld this information for 7 years.
So let's talk about that part, because I asked you off air, why didn't the committee, the finance committee, see this earlier from an auditor's report, which you get all the time on these
Absolutely. And so a couple answer the question. The first one is the auditor did do a report. However, the auditor reports to the treasurer. And so the report we received from the auditor, we found out, was not the original report written by the auditor, but that the treasurer negotiated with the auditor, who works for him, how he could alter the report that makes it look less damning to the treasurer's office. And so that was problem number one. Problem number two, however, is we have two offices that check each other. We've got the treasurer's office and we've got the comptroller general's office. And the comptroller general is a checks and balances. You remember that from your social studies classes in high school. It's a separate agency that will be a check on the treasurer's office. And we found that the treasurer was not only withholding information on this $1.8 billion from us, is that he was withholding it from the comptroller general's office. In an Excel spreadsheet, for those of your listeners that are familiar with those, is you can hide columns and you can show columns. And there was a column that the treasurer was hiding from everyone, and it was a flow-through account. And so many entities, the radio station I'm sure has a flow-through account. Most of our listeners that have businesses or even teachers will have a flow-through account. And this basically is an account that's always supposed to be zero. And so if a teacher is raising money to buy T-shirts for their academic quiz bowl team, the kids will sell donuts. The proceeds goes into an account. Once the account reaches $285, she cuts a check for $285 to the T-shirt place.
In and out.
In and out. Yeah. And Winthrop will have those. Kids pay for tuition. Winthrop then cuts a check to the professors for the courses at Winthrop. It's just a flow-through account, which means the account is always supposed to be zero. If it's not zero, it's because we're waiting on a check to clear or we're waiting for the money to get into the account. This account back 7 years ago, all of a sudden, when the state changed their software that we used on this, had $1 billion in it. The next year, $1.3 billion in it. And then the next year, $1.8 billion in it. And it should always be zero. That column was always hidden so that the comptroller general didn't see it. And it was hidden from the Senate so that we didn't see it. And it was a flow-through account. So it was an account that you would think eventually, and so what would eventually would be zero. And so over the last 7 years, the treasurer has been trying to, on his own, find out where did this extra money that I now have come from? And who do I need to send it to? Because typically, tax money comes in, State Department of Education is supposed to get $800 million. Then he invests the $800 million, and once a quarter he gives them 1/4 of that money to go through the year while he's investing the rest of the money on behalf of the state of South Carolina. And then he sends it back to them. He lost track of where this $1.8 billion has come from. And so a line that's supposed to be zero, that's supposed to be a flow-through account, has had $1.8 billion in it for years. He kept it from everyone because he was ashamed that he didn't know where it came from. And the only reason we got tipped off was two things. One time, a employee that used to work for the treasurer's office went to work for the comptroller general's office. When she got there and she was looking at the treasurer's accounts, she mentioned to the comptroller general, "Hey, I don't see this account. There's a flow-through account that has a bunch of money in it, and I don't see it." And that was the first time that we began to peel the onion that the treasurer was withholding an entire account that he created from the comptroller general, from the governor, and from the General Assembly. And so our committee of 6 senators, the Oversight Committee, began holding hearings to get to the bottom of the mess. We have found out, at first we asked him when he first came to testify, is this money real? Because the prior year with the comptroller general, it was a paper error and there was no actual money involved. And so this time we said, Mr. Treasurer, we understand there's an error involving $1.8 billion. Is that money real or is it just a paper error? He initially responded with, I don't know if it's real. And so I asked and said, well, you're our treasurer. If you don't know whether the money's real, who possibly could know, especially since you withheld this information from others? And I said, we could be making interest off of this money until we find out. He said, oh, no, we've been making interest off of it, which then made us worry about his capacity, because if you're making interest off of the money, then it's real. You can't be making interest off money that doesn't exist. And so he finally admitted that, yes, this is real. We can go touch it. It exists in real life. It's sitting there. In fact, last year, the state made $225 million in interest off of it. And he sent it into the general fund, which means we spent it. And that has us worried, because it could be that some of that $1.8 billion could be some federal monies that was sent to the state of South Carolina to work on, for example, interstates over the next 3 or 4 years. If the state of South Carolina is making interest off of the federal government's money and didn't give them their portion of the interest, then we can be liable for that. And so we immediately called more hearings to get to the bottom of it. We brought in additional people to testify. We brought in the accountant and the state's backtracker for following the monies. He admitted that the treasurer had asked him to negotiate a change to the report, which is really unraveling some severe problems that we've had.
So was this auditor an employee of the Treasurer's Department, or was he an independent?
So this is the state has an auditor.
Right.
The problem is that the state auditor reports, at least in part, to the state treasurer. So not only is this person not an independent auditor, is that the auditor himself answers to several people, one of which is the state treasurer. And so you're not as likely to share something that could be embarrassing to your boss if your boss has the power over you. And so that's obviously a change that needs to occur as well. So we had a series of meetings. We brought him up. At one point, he testified for 7 hours answering questions. We talked about what the law requires in terms of the treasurer's office. The treasurer's required once a quarter to report the status on all of our funds. So, for example, we've allocated X amount of money to the Department of Ed. We have to report once a quarter how much the Department of Ed has spent so far, and the rest of the money is making interest on these types of bearings of accounts. Back in the dark ages, that would be in the back page of the newspaper. In those pages nobody reads. In recent years, it's of course online. He had been doing that up until 7 years ago, and then when the state switched accounting systems, he stopped reporting. And we called him on it and said, "Look, you're required to do this. You haven't reported these regularly for the last 7 years." And he immediately started yelling, holding up the accounting numbers. It turned and talked to his staff, yelling at his staff, "These senators want us to report the account numbers so that everyone, the Ukrainians, the Soviets, the Chinese, can hack into our accounts. And it's dangerous, but they want us to do it. So I want you to take these and put these account numbers online right now for the whole world to see." And it was very disconcerting to happen in a testimony hearing. We immediately said, no, the law doesn't require, nor are we asking you to put account numbers to banks online. It's just the status of the funds so that we, as a state, know where we stand. The next day, he sent us a letter saying, because you asked, I'm going to put all the banking account routing numbers online for everyone to see. We actually had to call in the governor's office. We had to call in SLED. We called in the Department of Administration that runs the website to take away his website credentials, and he finally backed down. It is a serious problem. It's the biggest financial fiasco in the history of the state. We are so thankful for the young lady that was the whistleblower that brought this information to our attention, because quite honestly, if we didn't start having hearings on it, we still would have this $1.8 billion floating out there. I do want to make sure it's clear to your listeners. The good news is it's not $1.8 billion missing.
Yeah.
It's $1.8 billion additional dollars we didn't know we had. That's number one. Number two, he certainly, the treasurer, did not purposefully take advantage of the system because it's extra money. So he's certainly not taking the money. There's nothing intent. The two problems was, one is incompetence, is to not know where $1.8 billion is. If you have a church treasurer and you can't balance your books one Sunday to the next, you no longer have a church treasurer. We have a treasurer that has lost track of $1.8 billion. And the reason that's important, people ask me all the time, is it criminal? Well, what's criminal is we've got kids that have been in crumbling schools when they were third graders. They're now 10th graders still going to crumbling schools, and we have $1.8 billion sitting here. We had a crisis of a high magnitude in South Carolina 5 years ago where people were losing their jobs. We didn't have enough money to keep services running. We were sitting on $1.8 billion. More importantly, our taxes today are higher than they need to be while we're sitting on $1.8 billion. And so criminal, I think what it is it's metaphorically criminal that we are not good stewards of that money, that we have two trusts. The most sacred trust, of course, is the vote in a democracy, but second to that is to be good stewards with the tax money. And so I am thankful to be serving on a committee that took our charge seriously. We have gotten to the bottom of it. We now know what's going on. We have all the information that we are gathering. Unfortunately, people all the time are saying, well, what are you going to do with $1.8 billion? What are you going to do with $1.8 billion? And they talk about the fact that the state can't do anything with $1.8 billion until we establish ownership. I want to be clear. The ownership are the taxpayers. They're the ones that own the $1.8 billion. We can't take action with the taxpayers' $1.8 billion until we find out where it was allocated. And so, for example, one of the things I would like to do is return it to the citizens that it came from. It was their money. We can't do that if we find out later, for example, that the feds have given us $400 million to fix interstates over the next 15 years. If we gave that money back to the taxpayers, we could get in trouble with the feds because that could be federal monies that were allocated for that. Second thing is, it could be that Clemson is saving 1% of their budget each year to rebuild Tillman Hall at Clemson, and after 15 years they're going to take all the money that was saved and rebuild Tillman Hall. Well, if we just gave all that money that's sitting in the pot that we can't allocate, we just gave away Clemson's money to rebuild Tillman Hall. So we've got to establish ownership. Taxpayers own it, but where it was supposed to go. And so the committee has done four things. Number one, we have gotten to the bottom of what happened and when. We've already done that. And we've done that so we can, number two, hold individuals accountable. The treasurer had a sacred trust. It was the only job he had. He was elected by the people to be the safeguard of our money, to keep track of where it was coming from, who it was allocated to invest it, and then to send it right back to those entities. And so we're in the process of number two is how do we hold him accountable? Number three, we have to make sure that it never happens again. And so we have authored a bill. I'm co-sponsor of a bill that would make the treasurer an appointed position by the governor. That's what other states do. That's what happens at the federal level. Some folks have said, well, we're not sure if we like Governor McMaster or whoever the governor is. My response is currently the requirements to be treasurer in South Carolina is you can't be in jail and you have to be over 21 years old.
So I'd be a good candidate.
You'd be an excellent candidate. But if we have it in an appointed position, we could make sure that they have a master's in accounting, that they have X number of years of experience in accounting, that they have X number of years experience running budgets of at least a certain amount of dollars. You could put some requirements in there such that even if you didn't, if the governor wasn't your best friend, you at least know that he could only appoint someone and the Senate would have the right to confirm or deny based on some credentials. But the other thing that's important with it is right now we're in a ditch. We're in a ditch with $1.8 billion that belongs to the taxpayers that we can't even get it back to the taxpayers. And the only one to get us out of the ditch is the person that got us in the ditch.
And your relationship with him right now is not good.
Correct.
The last hearing, he got so upset, he threw his pencil down and said, "You're not listening to me at all."
Absolutely. Absolutely. And normally what would happen is the governor would suspend the person, would fire the person, would bring in expertise to get us out the ditch. The governor can't do it because it's an elected position. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that we make that an appointed position by the governor so that we, number one, bring in somebody with expertise. Number two, give the governor the power to say, look, if you can't do the job, I'm firing you and I'm bringing somebody else in. And so that's the third one. And the fourth one is we need to do right by the taxpayers with their money. It belongs to them. And so we need to make sure we're following that process, finding out who to hold accountable, finding out what really happened and making sure that it never happens again. And then number three, make sure we do right by the taxpayers. And then the last one is a forensic audit. And so the Senate has already co-sponsored a process that would bring in an outside forensic audit firm, one of the top three in the country, that would come in. And this money has been in question for 7 years. We're going to ask them to go back 8 years, the last time the treasurer was actually reporting it, and to find out specifically where every dollar came from, where it was designated for, what happened, what investment pool did he invest the money in, Where did the interest go? Where did the monies go back to the correct agency? And that forensic audit should help us not only get to the bottom of it, but also establish the ownership beyond the tax.
Has that already been passed?
And so it has been passed within the budget, so it actually doesn't become final until the budget becomes final. Okay. But both the House and Senate have agreed to it, and it should go into effect July 1st.
So when this happened last year with the Comptroller General,
yes,
did we not do pretty much the same thing?
Very much the same thing. So the good news with that case is he immediately, the one difference is he immediately resigned. The governor was able to put someone in there with amazing qualifications that helped us get out the ditch. And we have a bill that the House should vote on this week that will put a ballot measure on the ballot in November saying, do we want to keep electing the Comptroller General, who no one even knows what they do, or do we want to give that appointment power to the governor with requirements of experience with us as the Senate checking them on? And so we had that situation last year, but last year it seemed huge at the time, but at least did not involve any real money. This is $1.8 billion we collected from taxpayers that we didn't need to collect from taxpayers.
Sat there and earned $225 million in interest. That's pretty interesting. All right, we're going to take our mid-program break. Remind everybody that you are listening to Straight Talk, live from Substation 2, Cherry Road across from Winthrop. Presented by Founders Federal Credit Union, relax your with Founders, and by Comporium, your friendly neighborhood tech giant. Good Pharmacy is with us, your hometown pharmacy, Ebenezer Road at Camden Avenue in Rock Hill. Okay, we got the gang here. We know what we're going to do. We do fresh subs and salads. We do it, what do we do it? We do it 6 days a week between 10 in the morning and 9 o'clock at night. And the way we do it is in the white letters, and we're going to chime it out together at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Slice, slice, slice. Garden, garden, garden.
Not bad. Back after these words.
If it's 12:30, it's Straight Talk on WRHI and CN2.
Have you ever wondered why so many people enjoy dining at Substation 2?
Good fresh food, even fresher than Subway, and it's also on the paleo diet.
I like the people. I like the food and being picked on.
I'm Charlie Ruffalo, and I guarantee you'll feel the same way after eating here at Substation 2, Cherry Road across from Winthrop.
Dr. Carrie Watson, the trauma medical director at Piedmont Medical Center, says she's very proud of what's being accomplished at Piedmont.
We are able to do robotic surgery. We are a robotic center of excellence, and that's robotic surgery for general surgery like gallbladders, hernias, colon. We also have robotic urology, so that's things like kidney removals and things with your bladder. We also have robotic neurosurgery that we're doing, and that's pretty amazing. Not a lot of places have that.
Piedmont Medical Center, a community built on care.
Relax with a discounted mortgage rate from Founders Federal Credit Union without paying for discount points. For a limited time, don't pay the 1% fee and get the lower rate. And don't forget, Founders never charges for PMI or private mortgage insurance. Unlock your dream home with a great rate and a Founders expert to guide you through the home financing process. Stop by a convenient office location or apply on Founders online by May 31st to lock in your lower rate. Visit foundersfcu.com/mortgage to learn more. Terms and conditions apply. Membership qualification required. Equal housing lender.
When disaster strikes, one of the most important things is getting life back to normal. A little compassion can go a long way. Paul Davis is here for you. Paul Davis is committed to handling any property damage with exceptional care because what we do is about more than property. It's about people. We have the training and expertise necessary to completely restore your property fast. For all your cleanup and restoration needs, call the experts at Paul Davis Restoration at 329-1140 or find us online at pauldavisrockhill.com.
There are lots of reasons why people like dining at Substation 2.
The food, the number 19 is the best.
When I want lunch, I come to Substation 2 because I can't remember never not coming here.
I'm Charlie Ruffalo, and I guarantee you'll feel the same way after eating here at Substation 2, Cherry Road across from Winthrop.
Straight Talk on WRHI FM 100.1 and CN2 is brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Relax, you're with Founders.
And back we are here at Substation 2, Cherry Road across from Winthrop. State Senator Mike Fanning is with us today, District number 17. So this is the last week of the session, is it not?
That is
this
correct.
Is it.
We'll go in for a couple days in June for vetoes by the governor, those kind of things. But Thursday at 5 o'clock, our Constitution requires us to be done for the year.
But you usually get called back.
And so we'll get, again, the only thing we can get called back in for are conference committee reports. The state budget has to get finalized by the governor. But
so how's that looking? You all have been going back and forth with the House.
So the House is working on their revision to our revisions. The House does the budget first. The Senate changes it. And then the House, because they authored it, they get what we call the second bite of the apple. And what they typically do is, this is kind of lawyers leveraging, is if we agreed with them on something, they may want to the next time not agree, so that it looks like in conference committee they're giving in on something that they didn't want in the first place to get something that they did want. So what usually happens, and we call it H2, is that the House will change their position to put them in good negotiating stature to then negotiate with the Senate on a compromised budget.
So you're optimistic it's going to pass?
But the good news is 1/3 of the new money is going to education. We are going to raise teacher salaries, beginning teacher salaries, by $4,500. They're going to be $47,000 next year. 6 years ago, they were $30,000. First-year teacher salaries next year will be $47,000. And so we got some good things in education.
Let me stop you right there, because I raise this question all the time when we talk about surpluses at the budget.
Yes.
Why is it that South Carolina doesn't look at the possibility of changing the whole paradigm of how we compensate teachers? You bring all these major industries to South Carolina, Boeings and the BMWs and Volvos, all these. You compete with them for good talent. They want talent, the best talent they can get coming out of these schools. So if we want to have the best talents teaching these prospective workers, why wouldn't we want to say, Governor, we like the $50,000 goal you have, but we think we want to bump that to 60.
Mm-hmm.
So let's work on 60, and we've got $1.8 billion here that we might be able to use for that.
Yes.
Now, I know we get into recurring money versus one-time money, et cetera, but I mean that was sent a strong message across South Carolina.
You are singing my song in harmony. Is if we did things the way we move heaven and earth for business and industry, we would do just that. So, for example, to get Scout Motors to come to South Carolina last year, we gave them $1.3 billion to get them here, because we know that in the long run that they will provide jobs, 8,000 jobs. Average hourly worker will make $67,000 a year. So we know that the benefit will outweigh the cost. Why we wouldn't do the same thing in public education has boggled my mind for a year. If we know that the number one thing that our fastest growing state in America, fastest growing industry state in America is going to need are highly qualified kids, and we know we're in the biggest teacher shortage ever, is what happens at Arby's when they can't find workers, they increase pay. Yeah. What happens, you go to McDonald's and you'll see a sign that they're now paying twice what they paid a year ago. Why we wouldn't use the same philosophy with education of saying, look, we're in the biggest teacher shortage we ever had. We've lost 7,000 teachers a year every single year for 3 years. Let's set a big goal where supply meets demand, which is what we do in business and industry. We've never tried that in public education. It's a shame.
I don't understand why. That's what bothers me.
We want to do it on the cheap, is what it is. That we want to incrementally move it up instead of having the honest question is, what would it cost to get young kids majoring in teacher education? Right. And what that would cost is making sure that if two teachers are married to each other, they can afford to live in the community they teach. And that doesn't happen in Fort Mill. That didn't happen in Beaufort. It didn't happen in counties all across South Carolina. Those conversations are awkward when government does it, because then government says, whoa, if we find the answer, we're going to need to do something to fix it. And are we willing to do that? I will tell you something that we've done in Fairfield that's exciting. Fairfield County, size of York County, has not had a new subdivision anywhere in the county in 30 years. We have 3 apartment complexes. 2 of them are rent controlled. The third only has 25 units. 75% of the people that work in Fairfield School District don't live in Fairfield County. And so we right now are finishing work on a neighborhood of homes that is designed only for teachers, and rent will be $900 a month for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a subdivision that's walking distance from the schools.
And we're going to have a lady on. We're going to have a lady back on by the name of Sue Rex,
who is responsible for
that
that leadership.
Part of that.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So here we have just a couple minutes left. And you will be back once the...
we would love to come back.
Well, you will be.
Oyella and I will come back. We need to do one. We need to do it live. Can we do a show where we're traveling in Oyella? Absolutely.
It'd have to be cool.
It would have to be cool. Yes, absolutely.
Old Yeller, by the way, is his 1970 truck.
Yes.
Are you listening to this here, you guys?
It's a 1970 truck. And it's called Oyella because at one time it was Yella.
It's right there. 1970 truck that he's still driving. 54 years old.
Yes. And lately I've been rolling down both air conditioners. Even my vent windows are open, trying to get some cool air in there.
Right.
Yes, rolling them down. Yeah, there's no button.
So you are.
I digress.
Really?
For the first time ever, I digress.
I just.
Our entire radio shows are usually a digression, but we're
normally I think I've lost control of the show.
Yes, sorry about that.
Very quickly,
yes.
Because we only have about 30 seconds left. You were fortunate not having a primary battle, correct?
Correct.
But you got 3 guys on the other side of the aisle that won't take your job.
Every 10 years we do a census,
right?
And we've been doing that, remember, since biblical times in Bethlehem and whatnot. But in America, with democracy, we also redraw the lines every 10 years to make sure every district is approximately the same size. One byproduct of that sometimes is something called gerrymandering. I taught it when I taught it in high school. I never thought one day I would have been gerrymandered, but the seat has been drastically changed. I've lost some wonderful folks in the western side of the county. It now jumps across the river into my 4th county, so we will now represent Fairfield, Chester, the Rock Hill area and surrounding areas of York County, and then over into Indian Land.
His name is Senator Mike Fanning. He's going to be a candidate for re-election, and we'll be talking to him once he is in the political arena.
Looking forward to it.
And that's going to wrap up our Straight Talk program live from Substation 2, Cherry Road across from Winthrop, presented by Founders Federal Credit Union. Relax here with Founders, and by Comporium, your friendly neighborhood tech giant. All right, if we can get this rogues gallery together one more time. Here we go. We do fresh subs and salads here at Substation 2, Cherry Road.
Every day.
How do we do it at the count of 3? 1, 2, 3.
Slice, slice, slice. Garden, garden, garden.
Have yourself a wonderful day. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow. Bye.
Love y'all.